Hello, my name is Igor and welcome to my tech fun. And it looks like we have a new manufacturer on PEI sheet market, and it is OSEQ from Czech Republic. That's the same country where the Prusa is located. And they sent me their products for a review, and it is the OSEQ Safe Print Sheet. Now, why it is called Safe? Well, I'm reading from the manual I got from them. It shows the hot surface label at temperatures on above 40 degrees Celsius. So we know it's hot and we shouldn't touch it. One more thing I want to mention here, and it's not in this manual. I'm commonly asked by my friends what printer should they buy for their kids. Is it safe or something like that? And I always told them that most common injuries in 3D printing are made by the spatula trying to removing the objects stick strongly to the glass surface. And I always advise them that to buy a printer with flexible sheet, or if they buy something like Ender3 V2, which has the carborundum glass, in that case I always advise that to buy a PEI sheet for it. It can be solved very easily. There is a magnetic surface which can be stick to the aluminum plate by 3M two-sided stick tape, and on that it can be placed this PEI sheet, which is on steel plate, and then it will stay there in a place. With the flexible plates, it is much easier to remove the printed objects, even if it has a larger surface. Okay, allow me a few more words from this letter. They said that this sheet has probably the best quality PEI powder surface on the market, and it's called a velvet texture. It is very smooth and compatible with the usual range of materials, and of course I will test that too. And of course it is double-sided, magnetic and flexible. Now under magnetic properly they mean that it has a steel shade. It can be attached to the magnetic, something like this, because magnetic, but it's not magnetic, so the steel cannot stay on it. On a black color, it is easy to see the fingerprints or any other dirt, so we know that it has to be cleaned. It has to be cleaned by isopropyl alcohol, and it's not mentioned here, but I know that it has to be cleaned when it is cooled down, so don't clean it when it's hot. And for this, actually, it is good that we have that hot label, so clean it when you don't see that hot. Never use acetone or something like that on this kind of sheets. And currently they have only sheets which are compatible with Prusa MK3S, compatible with the Prusa Mini, and 235 by 235, which are for Ender3 Pro, Ender 5 Pro, which I have and I will test it on this, BIQ B1 and similar. Okay, now let's see what I have in these packages. I got two sheets. There are some stickers. So probably this one is for the Prusa printer, and this one is for Ender3 Pro or Ender 5 Pro. And I can see probably this is that label, so when it is hot, here I should see some color changes. Well, we will see that in a few seconds. And for the feeling, if I want to compare it, I think it is something similar like Prusa's satin. Let me show you my Prusa sheets. So this one is the smooth PEI sheet, and it is great for the PLA, but PETG may stick too good to it. I should use some glue stick or some other separation layer, and that's why I like with the PETG to use the powder coated, and it has very nice textured surface on it. Now the PLA don't stick too good to this. I mean, it sticks, but if I have a lot of small surfaces, I'm always afraid that they will fall down. And between these two, we have the satin, and it is actually something between. And from the feeling, I can see that it is more similar to these new OSEQ sheets. And this is steel, and it doesn't stick. So this is not really magnetic, but it is on steel sheet. And this is magnets, and this means by magnetic they mean that it will stick to the magnetic base. Now unfortunately they don't sell the magnetic bases, so if you want to use on Ender3 V2, you should separately buy the magnetic base which you will stick to the aluminum plate, and in that case you can use these sheets. I hope in near future they will sell the magnetic bases too. but at this moment they don't have it yet. Let's take a closer look under the microscope. This is a Prusa smooth PEI sheet, and on this roller these lines are 1 mm. Of course we can see some texture on it, some minimal texture, but of course it is quite smooth compared to the next one, which is the textured PEI sheet. And there is of course again the ruler, you can see 1 mm lines, and you can see those holes actually, and this will give that nice textured surface to the first layer, bottom of the first layer. And now let's see the Prusa satin sheet. Still for reference, those lines are 1 mm. I thought this would be similar to powder coated sheet, only with the smaller holes, but this is something completely different. And now let's compare with the OSEQ sheet. Very similar. So definitely yes, this looks like the Prusa satin sheet. I could compare it with that. Let's try to place it side by side. So on the left side it is the Prusa satin sheet, on the right side it is OSEQ Safe sheet. But it's time to print something and to see if this sticker works, and first I will start with the PLA. I should be more careful with touching this surface. I can see my fingerprints there, but I will clean it with isopropyl alcohol before I start with using. Now see how will it stick to this sheet. I have those pins, they go here in this groove. For the feeling, like other Prusa sheets, so I cannot feel any difference in this. It sticks good, so I'm sure it will stay in the place. And until it's cold, I will clean it with isopropyl alcohol. I will preheat it and then follow the changes on this label. It is almost 60 degrees Celsius, and of course, yes, clearly it is visible that it is now a hot surface. I think it's time to print something. And I'm starting with the Prusament PLA. And I have to adjust the live Z. The value is very similar to the powder coated text sheet. Printing is finished, and I will keep the bed temperature at 60 degrees Celsius because I believe that if it cools down it will pop up too easily. Okay, so it's set to 60 degrees Celsius, and now let's try to pull these test objects. And now let's repeat this with the PETG. It was stored in a vacuum bag. Bed adhesion PETG, and now the bed temperature will be 90 degrees after the first layer. So far so good, and theoretically I think this should stick better than the PLA. PETG is also printed. I will keep the bed temperature on 90 degrees Celsius. For the filling, I think it was a little bit weaker than the PLA. Interesting. And now Prusament ASA, and I will set the bed temperature to 110 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what is the maximum temperature for this surface, but usually the limitation is for the magnetic base, but here it's already installed earlier. Print front SD ASA. Starting bed temperature is 105 degrees Celsius and later 110 during the printing. This label should scream now because it is a very hot surface. It's printing the brim now, and it is 27 degrees Celsius in this room currently. I hope that will be enough because I don't want to use the enclosure now. Printing is almost finished without an enclosure, and it looks great actually. And I thought I will have a second attempt where I will use a glue stick, but because usually on satin and powder coated I use a glue stick, but here it was printed correctly and quickly set the temperature so it stays on this, because here I'm sure that it will detach completely if it would cool down. It was quite weak, but it was printed correctly. Let's see the other one. This was stronger. This was very pleasant surprise because it was printed completely. Usually with a satin and powder coated sheet I use this glue stick, but here it was printed okay. And okay, this surface is quite small, but with bigger area and of course with the enclosure it will be printed better. And let's quick check if I have any warping. But it's quite straight. It's still quite good. So I will wait until the bed cools down and probably it will be easier to remove it, but this is really promising that it sticks quite good. So probably it was removed easily because there was some minimal warping and it removed from the surface. Oops. And now let's see under the microscope how this bottom layer looks like. Visually I cannot really see any texture mark. Maybe I could go even lower with the live Z. Okay, surface cooled down and no more hot surface label on the sheet. And I want to measure how strong is the magnet. I mean, Prusa has very strong magnets. 0.855 kilograms. Now this is important because if you print a large object from ASA or ABS, and it depends on your enclosure, the temperature inside, but some warping may appear and it may try to lift the surface. Even if it sticks good, you use some glue stick. If you don't have a good adhesion to the magnets, in that case it may be lifted together with the printed object. But as I mentioned on Prusa, these magnets are very strong, and now we'll see how strong are on the NR5 Pro. And this is the smooth PEI sheet which arrived with this printer. .59 approximately. So actually the OSEQ is stronger in this case. Probably the steel plate is thicker than on this smooth sheet, which is good. Probably it's heavier too, but I'm not sure does it affect the printing. Now let's check the mass, which may be important for the bed finger printers. OSEQ 247 grams. Smooth PEI sheet 282 grams. Satin sheet 250 grams. And powder coated 245 grams. No big difference. This is Ender 5 Pro, and similar to Ender 3 Pro, it arrives with this so-called soft magnetic sheet. And this means not only the base is magnetic, but also this sheet. Now for the filling, it don't stick too good to this base, so but I will try to measure it. Not much, approximately 0.14. For the filling, I can tell that it is already stronger, but let's try to measure it somehow. .6 approximately. So definitely much stronger than the base smooth magnetic sheet. But now let's compare it with the Reality smooth PEI sheet. For the filling, very similar, like with the previous OSEQ sheet. 0.51, 0.46, 0.45. So a little bit weaker than OSEQ, but very similar. Cleaning, pad leveling. Let's hit the build plate. I will start with the printing, but I'm prepared to lower the baby steps, because I'm sure that I have to go deeper with the nozzle into this material. Printing is almost finished, and I can see some stringing. I hope it will not affect my experiment. And now I have to move the camera and to prepare my testing equipment. And just in case, cut the stringing. Mm, 0.135. 0.1 approximately. Just to see how easy it is to remove this skirt and this piece of filament. It could be a little bit harder, so probably I have to go even lower with the Z offset. The bed surface is still 60 degrees Celsius, and for a shorter period I can actually touch this temperature, but I will mention the reason in the conclusions. And now the final thoughts. Well, I'm always very happy when I see new companies in the 3D printing industry, and OSEQ will have a good product. Only I can still see that they are at the beginning of the manufacturing. About the adhesion, for the PLA I will still use the smooth PEI sheets for PETG, the texture. I was expecting a little bit better adhesion with the PETG on this surface, but I was very pleasant surprised that I could print ASA without enclosure and without the glue stick. So that's very promising, but of course I have to experiment a little bit more with this, because it depends a lot from the Z offset. That's why I will not print here the PETG or ASA. Well, actually I even couldn't print ASA because I'm limited here to 240, and that ASA has to be printed on 260 degrees Celsius. Of course, if I have to choose only one, then definitely Prusa satin or this kind of sheets would be my choice. I already mentioned earlier, Prusa satin has a little bit, maybe 10% better adhesion compared to this one I measured earlier, but of course depends how accurate is my measuring. That's not a big difference. It depends on the Z offset, depends how clean was the surface. About this hot surface mark, I'm not really afraid of 60 degrees Celsius, because it appears only above 40 degrees Celsius. I would be happier if this would appear above 60 degrees Celsius, and in that case I know that I shouldn't touch this surface. But it still can be useful, because this is very good warning for me. to never use isopropyl alcohol on the surface if I see this mark, because it has to be used on cold surface. At least with the Prusa satin we have this warning. I think this is that case too. It would be good to see the marks, side 1, side 2. I usually use a marker and mark a letter, so because after some time one side will be better than the other, and it would be good to follow which side to use. I would like to see those grid lines also, because they are for me very useful. I have them on Prusa smooth sheet. They're useful because I can see in Prusa slicer where is my object placed, and if I want to use the glue stick, I know exactly where I have to place the glue on the surface. I hope in near future that they will sell the magnetic bases too, because I think that will be the complete product, because not everyone has a magnetic base installed on their printers. So selling the magnetic base too would be really a complete product, and I hope in near future they will have much more surfaces, maybe something for my FRS Sun Super Racer, this circle, because I'm not too happy with this glass surface here. Well, that will be my review of this OSEQ Safe Print Sheet. I try to cover all main aspects. If I miss something, then write me in a comment, and in next print sheet review I will include that too. Thank you for watching and happy printing!